Hey students, it's your instructor Anna Otto. Thanks to those of you that managed to join in today for our Zoom office time. For those that didn't, I'm going to go ahead and share with you the slides that I presented. Just a little quick fun fact about me. My favorite number is the number 3. In this presentation, I'll be giving a quick overview of some of the content for Module 3. In preparing this presentation, number 3 really stood out to me. As I said, 3 happens to be my favorite number, and it's also a number that comes up a lot during this chapter. So here we go with the power of 3. Module 3 also happens to be Chapter 3 in our text, and as you can see, the chapter includes 3 distinct sections: prenatal development, birth, and the newborn baby. This table, taken from our text, shows a nice summary of major milestones of prenatal development. The images highlight the 3 developmental stages of prenatal development: the germinal period, the embryonic period, and the fetal period. The table also shows how those periods fit into the perhaps more familiar grouping of trimesters. It's interesting to note that all 3 of the developmental stages fall within the first trimester. This also illustrates how rapid growth and change is during the first months of development. Just think about it. The organism goes from one cell, the fertilized egg, to a complex organism with all of the basic foundation for the whole new human life. The chart also highlights how much longer the period of the fetus is than either of the other 2 periods. The germinal period, also sometimes called the period of the zygote, lasts 2 weeks. After a sperm fertilizes an ovum, the chromosomes from each line up and the cell begins to divide through the process of mitosis. The developing organism travels through the fallopian tube and into the uterus, where it burrows into the uterine lining. During the next 6 weeks, the process of mitosis continues, and through the process of cell differentiation, the foundations for all of the major systems of the new life begin. Starting in the 9th week, we now refer to the developing organism as a fetus. This is by far the longest period of development, lasting about 30 weeks. It is sometimes referred to as the growth and finishing period. Keep in mind that our dating system, with an average pregnancy length of 38 weeks, is based on the date of conception. If you were to do an internet search for average length of pregnancy, though, you would likely be told that it's 40 weeks. This is because pregnancies are commonly dated from a woman's last menstrual period, or LMP. Using this dating system, one is 2 weeks pregnant at the point of conception. After the baby finishes developing, it's time to bring this new life into the world. The process of childbirth is referred to as labor, which is aptly named since it is hard work both for mom and baby. Childbirth has 3 distinct stages. Stage 1 is the stage of dilation and effacement of the cervix. Stage 2 is the pushing and delivery of the baby. And stage 3 is the delivery of the placenta. Typically, the first stage is by far the longest, lasting around 12 to 14 hours on average for first births. Stage 2 typically lasts about 50 minutes. Stage 3 only lasts about 5 to 10 minutes and is often unnotable. Another instance of threes in childbirth is the phases of labor. Be careful not to confuse the phases, which you may have heard of, with the stages we just discussed. 3 phases of labor all happen during the first stage of labor. During the first phase, early or latent labor, a woman will start to have contractions and the cervix will begin dilating or opening and effacing or thinning. The contractions become stronger and occur closer together during the active labor phase. At this point, most women will seek medical attention if they haven't done so already. Finally, during the last phase of transition, contractions are very strong, very close together, and last for 60 to 90 seconds each. As the cervix fully dilates to 10 centimeters and becomes 100% effaced, it can often feel as if the contractions are coming one right on top of the other. As we've already said, pregnancy is on average 38 weeks from conception to delivery. An average newborn weighs 7.5 pounds at birth. Some babies, though, come too early or are born too small. We refer to these babies as premature. Historically, premature babies are those that arrive 3 weeks or more before their due date or weigh less than 5.5 pounds. Obviously, babies who haven't had the full time to gestate are at risk of complications. So are those that are particularly small, since birth weight is the best available predictor of infant survival and development. Among premature babies, there are two types, preterm and small for date. Preterm babies are those that are born several weeks or more before their due date. Though they are typically smaller than full-term babies, their weight may be appropriate for the length of the pregnancy. Small for date babies, on the other hand, are smaller than one would expect based on the length of the pregnancy. They may be preterm infants or they may be full-term infants. Overall, infants who are small for date are at greatest risk for complications, as their small size may indicate that something didn't quite go right during the pregnancy. For example, they may not have gotten enough nutrients. Certainly, being both preterm and small for date puts a baby at the greatest risk for complications. There are many reasons why there might be complications with the pregnancy, including these three: genetics, teratogens, and other maternal factors. We talked about some possible genetic abnormalities in Chapter 2. Teratogens are any environmental agent that cause damage during the prenatal period. Examples include drugs, alcohol, tobacco, radiation, pollution, and infectious disease. Clearly, moms have more control over some of these factors than others. Most women who are of childbearing age have been asked if they are pregnant or could be pregnant before receiving a prescription or having x-rays taken, since these are items that may have a risk to the developing baby. Unfortunately, the Sacramento Valley has a fairly high level of pollution. While we can't totally eliminate this risk, we can sometimes reduce it by avoiding outside exposure when the air is particularly bad. Remember the recent warnings during wildfire season when sensitive groups were advised to avoid going outside? Right now, there is extra concern about the potential risks of COVID for pregnant women and newborn babies. With teratogens, it's important to note that their potential effect on a developing organism isn't usually cut and dry. In addition to the type of teratogen, the amount, developmental period, heredity, and other negative factors will determine the potential amount of damage. Other maternal factors include nutrition, emotional stress, Rh incompatibility, age of mother, and prenatal care received. It's important for moms to get a healthy, balanced diet. While true malnutrition probably isn't a huge risk in the US, it is a big concern in many places of the world. In the US, unfortunately, there are women, children, and families, though, who are food insecure. In our discussion in Chapter 2, I talked about the four blood types, O, A, B, and AB. In addition to the A and B antigens, there is a protein called the Rh factor, which can either be present, positive, or absent, negative. An individual with a negative Rh factor will make antibodies against Rh positive cells if they are detected in the system. So if Rh positive fetal cells interact with the mother who's Rh negative, her body will see them as an unwanted foreign substance and attack the developing baby. Thankfully, special immune globulins called RhoGAM can be used to eliminate this risk. This is an example of why routine prenatal care is so important for all women. Speaking of prenatal care, some of you may have heard of geriatric pregnancies, or as it's more PC now, um, advanced maternal age. That's when a woman over 35 is pregnant, and one of the ways that maternal age can be a consideration in the risk of a pregnancy. Moms who are older, so 35 or older, or who are particularly young are at greater risk for complications with their pregnancies. As I said on the last slide, the potential damage from a teratogen matters in part based on when it's encountered. This chart, taken from the text, shows major systems are being formed. While it initially looks like the embryonic period is the longest, we know this is not the case. Remember, the period of the embryo is only 6 weeks, while that of the fetus is 30. However, the embryonic period is critical for development. It's when the foundation for all of the major systems is laid down. Hence, it is also the riskiest period for negative effects from teratogens. Our final slide provides information about the newborn baby. Three types of behaviors are discussed in this section: reflexes, states of arousal, and sensory capacities. Reflexes are inborn automatic responses to particular stimulation. They are the first organized patterns of behavior. While there are many, the ones discussed in the text are rooting, sucking, moro, palmar grasp, and stepping. Rooting and sucking are both important for feeding. If you rub a newborn's cheek, they will turn their head toward the sensation. This is rooting, and it allows the newborn to turn in search of a nipple. Sucking, then, is how the infant extracts milk. Both the moral reflex and the palmar grasp are thought to have deep evolutionary roots. The stepping reflex is the precursor to later independent walking. States of arousal are the sleep-wake patterns of the newborn. New babies actually sleep a lot. They sleep about 16 hours per day. So then, why are so many new parents exhausted? It's because babies' 16 hours of sleep comes in short bouts of 2 to 4 hours around the clock. Of the 16 hours of sleep, about half are spent in REM sleep and half in non-REM sleep. Both are important for the developing body and brain. As we'll learn in the next module, infants gradually organize their sleep patterns and spend longer periods of time both awake and asleep. In terms of the sensory capacities, all 5 senses are functional from birth. Babies can hear and, as we've already discussed, have preferences for familiar voices and speech patterns. Babies can smell and indicate a preference for the smell of their own mother's. Babies also have taste preferences, and they are certainly able to feel. Of the senses, vision is the least developed at birth. I encourage you to bend your arm in front of you and imagine you are holding a little baby. The distance from the crook of your elbow to your face is the distance at which a newborn can see clearly. Objects beyond this distance are blurry. Over the course of the first year of life, vision develops rapidly. That's all the information I have to share for this video. Take care and let me know if you have any questions.